This is insane.
On this Wednesday night, the wildfire smoke smothering parts of Canada and the U.S.
I need to get a mask or something.
The action some hospitals and airports have taken, and what can happen as wildfire particles travel farther. The Bank of Canada thinks the economy is getting too hot, so it's hiked interest rates again, taking a bite out of would-be home buyers.
That's kind of infuriating to hear.
A scientist accused of developing Syria's chemical program is traced to Alberta.
Very sweet old man.
A Global News exclusive. And a wild discovery in the wild, the crocodile who made herself pregnant.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Nitu Karcha.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Tens of millions of people in Canada and the U.S. are being urged to wear a mask or stay inside as a massive body of smoke swirls over the northeast. Parliament Hill barely visible in this drone shot of downtown Ottawa as an eerie haze hovers over the capital for a second straight day.
As of today, there are 2,293 wildfires that have occurred in Canada. Approximately 3.8 million hectares have been burned. Also, as of today, an estimated 20,183 people remain evacuated from their homes and communities.
The situation on the ground remains alarming, with this country already on track to exceed the largest total amount of burned area ever recorded in a single year. We'll have more on the firefight in just a moment. We begin with concerns over historically bad air quality in some of North America's biggest cities. Touria Izri has our top story.
Thick haze is coating much of the country and choking the nation's capital. At one point, the air quality in Ottawa was worse than Delhi, with pollution 15 times above the World Health Organization's recommendations for what's considered safe. Public health agencies are urging people to stay inside, but that's not always possible.
It's smelly. With the gas burning and the smoke, you just constantly can't get fresh air in.
The unprecedented start to Canada's wildfire season is creating dangerous conditions across North America. This map shows some of the worst spots in Ontario and Quebec. In Kingston, the skyline is not even visible, while Toronto is closing the dome of the Rogers Centre for Wednesday night's Blue Jays game.
It's very, very heavy.
It's so heavy, Carleton Place Hospital west of Ottawa cancelled some surgeries because of poor air quality inside the operating room. Its aging ventilation system can't filter out all the smoke. Environmental scientists say there's evidence to suggest wildfire particles become more toxic as they travel.
The nature of particulate air pollution is that it's sort of a dynamic mixture. We define it as sort of airborne particles of a certain size, but within that size range, the composition can change.
The changing climate is unleashing more severe weather and creating a host of health hazards.
So the constituents of wildfire is not that much different from cigarette smoke. The difference is that with cigarette smoke, people smoke maybe 12 times a day. On the other hand, we breathe 12 times to 20 times a minute.
The exposure is especially dangerous if you're pregnant, a senior, or have respiratory issues.
With my asthma, it burns my throat and my throat's itchy, and then I cough. So I have to have my inhaler.
If you have to go outside, doctors say wear an N95 mask. They helped protect against COVID-19 and now offer a layer of defense against another threat to public health. Touria Izri, Global News, Ottawa.
That smoke from Canada led to some apocalyptic scenes in New York City today. Dramatic drone shots show an orange glow filling the sky mid-afternoon as the thick haze triggered air pollution warnings across large swaths of the U.S. Similar scenes played out in several northeastern U.S. cities, with some officials calling the worsening air quality an emergency crisis. Jackson Prosco joins us from Washington. Jackson, how's it looking there?
Well, Neetu, here we are 800 kilometers away from the source of the fires, and yet you can see the smoke in the air. It burns your eyes, it tickles the back of your throat, and if you stay outside long enough, you will definitely feel the impacts of it. Unprecedented is the best way to describe the situation here right now. But I want to go back to what happened in New York today, as we saw that thick plume of smoke really move into the city, effectively blocking out the sun and causing that apocalyptic orange glow over the city. You know, visibility was reduced so much that not only did officials tell people to stay indoors and limit their time outside unless they were wearing masks, but we actually saw 2 of New York City's airports limit departures and arrivals. They implemented ground stops because visibility was so low and so bad, and the air quality index was classified as very unhealthy for anybody, hazardous to anybody, at over 400. That is unprecedented. That is historic in that city. Right across the U.S., we saw about 60 million people in places where the air quality is classified as unhealthy, and there are ongoing warnings about what the next few days are going to look like, because we're expecting to see wave after wave after wave of this smoke blow through these areas and really hamper air quality. And that's why, with us locked in this weather pattern, there continue to be these warnings to really limit your time outside. Here in Washington, D.C. this morning, we actually saw air qualities drop into the very unhealthy category this morning. The air quality index was around 200, but the worst is yet to come over the next few days. And so local schools have actually canceled recess, canceled outdoor activities and field trips, and kept students indoors because it's really just too unsafe to have them outside for prolonged periods. And so for the next few days, there's going to be this continued threat. But Neetu, that's not all. There's really concern about the possibility of localized forest fires, because this area is also in a drought as well.
All right, Jackson Prosco in Washington. Thanks, Jackson. There are 414 fires burning in Canada. More than half are out of control. Around 21,000 people are out of their homes, and about 6,500 of them are from First Nations communities. On Vancouver Island near Port Alberni, the Cameron Bluffs fire has grown, and it's closed the only major highway in and out of the area. But in Nova Scotia, some good news. The Shelburne County fire, the largest in that province's history, is now being held and not likely to spread. But it is still considered out of control. There are fires burning in almost every province and territory, and much of the country is at high risk for fires, shown here in red and orange. Quebec has about 150 fires. There are more people out of their homes. Residents in 2 northern communities had to leave last night, and more evacuations are possible in the days ahead. Mike Armstrong reports on the firefight and the help coming.
Firefighters in Quebec's north have been overwhelmed, only able to fight about a third of the fires that are burning. One they weren't battling on the ground was northeast of Chibougamau. Tuesday, winds moved it about 20 kilometers closer to town. The mayor took to Facebook Tuesday night to say the fire moved faster than predicted and ordering an evacuation. People were told to gather as few possessions as possible and move to Roberval, about 250 kilometers away. About 7,000 people tried to leave almost together, causing a bottleneck, followed by bumper-to-bumper traffic the rest of the way. What would normally be a 3-hour drive turned into 8 and stretched through the night. The Roberval Arena is now a shelter for about 1,000 evacuees. Others are staying with family or friends or in hotels. Quebec now has more than 11,000 people who've been forced from their homes. That number is likely to grow. In the case of the town of Chapet, there were evacuations last week. People went home, and they may soon be told to evacuate again. The province has right now, according to the Premier, about 520 firefighters and 150 soldiers. Over the next week, help is coming from other provinces and other countries.
New Brunswick, France, United States, Portugal, Spain, and Mexico. So we are looking to increase the number to about 1,200.
Now, there is an issue with aircraft. Quebec has 11 tankers in the air, with 6 more on the way. But pilots are closing in on the maximum they can fly. They have mandatory rest coming, and the aircraft have mandatory maintenance and checks every 50 hours.
We cannot expect that all the aircraft will be able to fly full-time every day.
Now, the extra bodies are good news, but they're only a short-term solution. The situation is bad enough. Quebec's firefighting agency says it's likely to need help all summer long. Mike Armstrong, Global News.
To the affordability crisis now, many mortgage holders are in for more financial pain. The Bank of Canada raised its key interest rate a 1/4 percentage point to 4.75%, the highest since April 2001. Interest rates are working to slow inflation, but the central bank says they're not high enough to bring it down to the 2% target. In April, inflation swung up for the first time in 10 months, adding pressure to hike interest rates today. It's all having a real impact on the way people approach home buying. And as Mike Drolet reports, the central bank and the federal government are facing criticism that they're out of touch with Canadians.
Canadians working to catch up to inflation in interest rates once again saw everything come to a screeching halt, as yet another hike put more distance between Kate McLaughlin and her dream of owning a house.
That's kind of infuriating to hear, especially with the cost of like grocery prices and everything has gone up. It's like there's just no grasp on reality.
The 0.25% bump is equivalent to $180 a month on a $1 million mortgage. And that's on top of the 4% hike since last year, which economist Jim Stanford sees as confirmation the Bank of Canada is fixated on inflation and only inflation.
So the fact that Canadians are experiencing a lot of pain because of these interest rate hikes doesn't stop the bank. In fact, they want to see more pain.
In Ottawa, there was no avoiding the slings and arrows directed at the Liberal government.
So Justin, how do you expect people to pay their bills now?
Leaving Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland to essentially shrug her shoulders while admitting there's widespread hardship.
It's really hard. And it is imposing real pain on a lot of Canadians and Canadian families. Absolutely understand that.
But do they? Because home ownership isn't in the cards for an increasing number of Canadians. We'll use Toronto as an example, where the median household income is $85,000. With a $100,000 down payment and fixed-rate mortgage, a family can afford a $414,000 home. The average price of a home near downtown is $1.3 million. Move to Scarborough, it's $1.2. Amidst the farms of Ajax is roughly the same, and even further afield in Bowmanville is pushing $1 million. And you can't see the city. Average just doesn't cut it anymore.
You're looking at $1 million, probably just for one level of that house.
Another bonus for McLaughlin, with fewer people able to buy, rents just keep going up.
People are now in a situation where they're never going to be able to buy, but they also can't afford their rent.
Leaving a for sale sign over the Canadian dream. Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
I'm Eric Sorensen at the Canadian Open with some news about the business of pro golf. That story ahead on Global National.
Soccer superstar Lionel Messi sent shockwaves through the sport today, announcing his plans to make a major move abroad.
Tomé la decisión de que voy a ir a Miami.
He says he's made the decision to sign with Inter Miami CF and join Major League Soccer, leaving Europe for the first time in his pro career. Messi reportedly turned down a more lucrative offer from Saudi Arabia's Pro Soccer League to move to the U.S. Saudi Arabia has used billions of dollars from its sovereign wealth fund to quickly assert itself on the global sports stage, including the Saudi-backed Live Golf Tour, which has agreed to a surprise partnership with the PGA and European tours. Four-time major champion Rory McIlroy, one of the biggest critics of Live, had mixed emotions to the news.
I look at 10 years down the line, I think ultimately this is going to be it's going to be good for the game of professional golf. I still hate Live. I hate Live.
Eric Sorensen reports from the Canadian Open, which is being overshadowed by the drama of the deal.
It's said about golf. You drive for show, but you putt for dough.
As the Canadian Open tees off this week, the PGA, the European Tour, and the Saudi Public Investment Fund have putted to a deal that should strike it rich for pro golf.
I was pretty shocked that it happened that quickly, too.
It's a huge climb down from the moral arguments the PGA made when the Saudi-funded LIV Golf Tour was launched, luring big-name golfers with millions of dollars in what many believed was a blatant attempt by the Saudis to launder their ruthless human rights record. PGA Commissioner Jay Monahan suggested then his golfers do what's right.
Any player that would ever consider leaving, have you ever had to apologize for being a member of the PGA Tour?
But as lawsuits flew both ways, Monahan decided to do a deal with Yasser Al Rumayyan, LIV's sponsor and now chairman of the new pro golf entity.
How did we go from, a confrontation to now being partners? We just realized that we were better off together than we were fighting or apart.
Golfers like Canadian Mackenzie Hughes felt blindsided.
Right now, it obviously is going to feel different or feel not right.
But Hughes is ready to make peace, like LIV's biggest critic, Rory McIlroy.
One of the biggest sovereign wealth funds in the world. Would you rather have them as a partner or an enemy? At the end of the day, money talks, and you'd rather have them as a partner.
Those who took LIV's money, like Phil Mickelson, are delighted, though some Canadian fans think golfers who stood by the PGA lost out.
I felt like they stuck with PGA, and it felt like they got stabbed in the back.
Bottom line?
They're touting, global growth and everything else, but it's money, money, money.
The PGA has always been about the business of golf, but for a time, since the creation of LIV Golf, the PGA stood for something greater in the public eye, a principle against so-called sports washing. But it seems in the end, the business case won out. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
A Global News exclusive. Ahead, is a scientist accused of developing Syria's chemical weapons program living in Canada? Crews are rushing to rescue Ukrainians stranded after their homes flooded from a collapsed dam yesterday. People waded through swamped streets carrying their belongings and helping others. With water levels still rising in some places, rescuers are using boats to search for the missing. Hundreds of thousands of people are without clean drinking water, crops are ruined, and the stage is set for a long-term electricity shortage. A major ecological disaster is unfolding too. Thousands of dead fish washed up on the shores of the reservoir after it dried up in hours. Ukraine and Russia are blaming each other for the attack that sent a torrent of water rushing down the Dnipro River into nearby cities and towns. One of the defining parts of Syria's civil war has been the unspeakable brutality against civilians. Chemical weapons were used to kill hundreds of people over the last decade. Now Global News has learned a senior scientist suspected to be behind Syria's chemical weapons program has been quietly living in Alberta. Recently, declassified documents allege Ahmad Haytham Alyafi helped establish the secret program, working for its research center for 20 years. He's been deemed a danger to Canadian security, but evidence suggests he's lived with his son and grandchildren in Edmonton for nearly a decade. A warning, some of the images of the aftermath of those chemical weapons attacks are disturbing. Heather Yourex-West has this exclusive report.
Children struggling for breath. The tiny patients here among the lucky ones, having survived a Syrian government-sponsored chemical weapons attack. In August 2013, hundreds convulsed and suffocated in Ghouta after government forces fired rockets loaded with sarin, an illegal nerve agent known to inflict horrific suffering and pain.
We know that Bashar al-Assad's regime has used chemical weapons against Syrian civilians for many, many years. And unfortunately, this has been sort of a forgotten issue in the West.
So forgotten it seems, Global News has learned an alleged former senior scientist with Syria's chemical weapons program has been quietly living in Edmonton.
Last time when I saw him, maybe December or November.
Of last year.
Yeah.
Residents here knew little about the allegations surrounding their elderly neighbor, who they say lived on this quiet street until just a few months ago.
Very sweet old man.
But according to declassified government documents obtained by Global News journalist Stuart Bell, Ahmad Haytham Alyafi, a chemical engineer, is alleged to have worked at the Syrian Scientific Studies and Research Centre from 1974 to 1994. The 2018 Canadian Security Intelligence Report says Mr. Alyafi was involved in the startup phase of the SSRC's pilot plan, the purpose of which was the production of chemical weapons. A subsequent CBSA National Screening Division report says Alyafi held high positions of importance, including project manager and technical director, and later became Syria's Vice Minister of Industry.
Initial thoughts are, first of all, why are we not deporting this person? And second of all, why are we not considering prosecuting this person?
In a statement to immigration officials, Alyafi denied ever making chemical weapons. Since my PhD was funded by SSRC, I had legal commitments to serve the center for 7.5 years. I found myself trapped. But Canada's immigration system and a federal court ultimately disagreed. And in 2021, Alyafi's application for permanent residency was denied. The Edmonton house is up for sale. Neighbours say the family hasn't been seen for several months. But with no evidence Alyafi's been deported, the question remains, where is the former Syrian scientist living now? Heather, Yourex-West, Global News, Edmonton.
Virgin birth. Next, the crocodile who made herself pregnant. All right, we have a fascinating story to tell you about tonight. What experts say is the first ever instance of a so-called virgin birth by a crocodile. According to a new study published in the Royal Society journal called Biology Letters, an 18-year-old crocodile laid 14 eggs at a zoo in Costa Rica back in 2018. Though none of them hatched, a fully formed fetus was discovered in one of them. The female crocodile lived alone in an enclosure since the age of 2. A genetic analysis confirmed the fetus had a 99.9% DNA match with its mother, confirming there was no father. Self-reproduction is rare, but has been documented in some species of birds, fish, and other reptiles. Scientists believe it happens when certain animals are endangered or can't find a viable mate. The study suggests the phenomenon might be more common for crocodiles than previously realized. And that is Global National for this Wednesday night. I'm Neetu Garcha. Tonight's Your Canada is Mactaquac, New Brunswick. We love seeing your Canada. Please keep sending your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks so much for watching. Donna will be back with you tomorrow. Have a great night.